All right, friends. I first want to say thank you for joining us. I know that it is in the afternoon on a Friday, and it's kind of sunny-ish outside where I'm at. So hopefully we can get you some great information and then get you out doing more great stuff on your weekend. We are here today to talk about positive behavioral intervention strategies and our ACES skills. So hopefully we will have lots of great stuff. Like Christine said, please engage in the chat. Jenna is watching the chat for me. So we want to make sure that you are getting out of this what you need. So I am Amber Delliger. I use pronouns she, her. I am from Metro North at the Anoka-Ramsey Community College campus. So this is my beautiful office here. I want you to know that I really love when people contact me after a session. So if you have great resources to share or you have any questions or if you want more information, you can email me and I will definitely be happy to connect with you and keep talking about these issues because I think they're really important. Our agenda for the day is pretty simple. I didn't want to overload you. I figured your brains are probably pretty tired by the end of the day, but this is some really important stuff. And I think if we start with just a couple really tangible things we can do a really big impact. And so that's my goal for today. So we are going to just start out by reviewing, maybe if you're not familiar with PBIS and ACES, kind of just make sure we're all speaking the same language. We're going to talk about some strategies that I use in my classroom that you could try. We're going to brainstorm with some friends, review our knowledge, and then head out and enjoy our weekend. So I want to start out with just setting the stage with what are positive behavior interventions and supports. So we want to make sure that we are creating an environment that is consistent and it is clearly communicated for not just our students, but for how we interact with every level of our system. So when I'm looking at some really big highlights of what PBIS is about, it's about building trust, promoting responsibility, and helping students succeed both academically and personally. And so big highlights for me when I think about PBIS is that it should be universal interventions for all individuals. So we're being really consistent with everybody that we deal with so that everybody is on the same page on how we navigate things. We want to prevent new behaviors. So our goal is that hopefully we can be proactive instead of reactive. And then we want to encourage expected behaviors that hopefully will help do some things that are going to continue the community and environment that we are trying to build at our schools and at our locations. Most programs really like to use data to drive these. In ABE, it looks a little different than maybe in a K-12 system, but we all have different ways that we track different student behaviors, interventions, student plans, and things like that. So our goal is that those are universal and clearly communicated no matter what the system is at our personal location. The other thing I wanted to highlight was that I'm going to be talking about ACES quite a bit today. And ACES, if you're not familiar, are one of our standards that we meet in adult education. So we have our academic standards, we have our technology standards, and then we use our transitions integration framework to help us look at our soft skills, our employability skills, those key components of being a successful part of our community. The transitions integration framework is broken up into these components here that you see on your screen. I did have Jenna drop the link in the chat. If you are not familiar or you don't have a copy of the transitions integration framework at a glance near you often, I really want to encourage you to do that. I actually am like looking up here. I have like 3 printed copies because I have them highlighted and marked differently for different purposes. But we're going to highlight a couple of these today and how these PBIS principles really align with the standards that we are being asked to meet in adult education. So I wanted to just put them side by side. PBIS, when we're utilizing PBIS strategies, it creates predictability, respect, and a classroom climate where students feel emotionally and physically safe. We are reinforcing positive behaviors like punctuality and engagement and collaboration. We're building consistency with clear expectations and routines, and this helps reduce our anxiety, help re-engage learners, and really help bring in especially some of our learners that have struggled in the past with different traditional systems. And it also centers around relationships, recognizing that we're working with adult learners who are whole people and have complex experiences that they bring with them when they come to our classrooms. And then looking at ACES, ACES are what we're really using to teach those critical soft skills that are essential for college or career and life. We're preparing learners for transitions into employment or further education. We're working really hard to support learner agency by building independence and confidence in navigating the systems that we encounter on a daily basis. And this really aligns with our academic goals because this makes learning relevant and practical. So what I really like about looking at these two side by side is that they complement each other in a way that it doesn't feel like we have to have time for PBIS and have time for ACES. They really complement each other quite well. So when we put it together and look at these as a holistic approach to working with these student needs, we're promoting equity, we're addressing behavior needs, we are being supportive, we are being trauma informed, we are thinking about our students in the way that respects them as adults with diverse experiences. We're trying to create these safe places where learners can take risks and develop their own skills that they need for their different environments. And then we're working really hard to ensure that our learners feel empowered and to be successful, not just in our class, but as they go into other situations like work, or if they have different kind of offices or at a school with their kids' school. These are future readiness skills. So I want to just make sure that this is just setting the table for the fact that these are not two separate ideas, but that they really blend well together. So using that just as a template for us to think about just setting the stage, I want to put them together in a tangible way. So what does this look like if we are looking in our classrooms? So I want to start out by acknowledging that we have, 55 people in this session right now and more that are going to be watching the recording. Every one of our classrooms looks different. We have different settings. We have different organizational norms that we're working with. And my goal here is that the fundamental principles of the different strategies we talk about are things that should be and can be implemented in every classroom in a way that can be consistent across your entire program. And I hope that this opens up an opportunity for you to talk with people who work near you or next to you or down the hall from you, to have conversations so that it doesn't matter which classroom a student is in, but there are things that we can expect as we work our way through a program. So the first thing I want to talk about in terms of strategies is clear behavior expectations. And this, in my mind, goes really well with our ACES navigating systems, especially skill number 2, which talks about identify and comply with rules, policies, and performance expectations. So it doesn't matter where we are or what we're doing or what role we're playing in a different setting, there are expectations for what success looks like. And so one of the things that I really want to encourage you to do is to clearly define what expectations are during your intake, which I'm sure in all of your intake processes, you have something similar to like a student code of conduct. But oftentimes, that just happens at intake and it's kind of left there. And I really want to encourage you to bring that back into the classroom. And the reason why I think that that's important is because we are saying we as an organization have this set of expectations on what a successful student looks like in our program. And that might be attendance, it might be participation, it might be coming ready to learn, it might be academic integrity. There could be lots of things in there, and that we're all on the same page. We want to also make sure that we are bringing expectations into what are specific things that look like success in your specific space. And then not just your space, but if students have to go to the computer lab, what are the behavior expectations that are special for the computer lab or for the bathroom or for the kitchen or wherever places your students might be going to or might be going to another teacher's classroom, making sure that what those expectations are should be really clear. And if you're having those clear expectations and that they're easily communicated and found and reviewed, that sets the stage for some really positive interventions that we'll talk about later. We want to make sure that we want to be on the same page before problems happen rather than trying to rush to create a system of expectations when there's a problem. That usually gets us in like an emotional place, and it often creates additional challenges that we have to navigate. I also want to make sure that I would love if you don't have open enrollment, that if you have managed enrollment, you should be working with students for students to help create an opportunity to discuss what success could look like or what student engagement could look like and what a successful student would look like in your classroom and hang those. I think anytime you can have students as a part of that conversation, it is definitely more powerful. There's more buy-in. I know that with open enrollment that can be a challenge. But when you are reviewing these expectations as a group, you can talk about what does a successful student in my class look like, feel like, and sound like. And the other really big thing about that is that if you have a system that everybody's agreeing on, whether it is a student code of conduct that is handed out on the first day of the class, or if it's hung in the classroom, everybody, it doesn't matter if there's a sub or if there is a volunteer, everybody is able to clearly understand what that means. So that it reduces that like squishy space of, I don't know what you want me to do. Well, we're going to try to be clear. One of the other things I think is really important about this is it shouldn't just be one way. It shouldn't just be how your students are behaving in the classroom. It should also be how you're interacting with your coworkers, how you're interacting with your peers, how the students see you interacting with each other. You can model that behavior. You can model those expectations so that it's this big collective idea. And I think that really helps. Finally, you want to make sure that throughout your program, there is communication about how you will respond to misbehaviors. And that I think is something that is sometimes not always done. I know that I've been in programs where sometimes we're really all on the same page and we respond the same way. And then there are some where we don't really have those conversations. So a student should know if I am having a misbehavior, what's going to happen no matter whose classroom I'm in. So that is going to be how we are setting clear behavior expectations from the beginning. This is how we are communicating, and maybe you need to have those expectations rewritten at language levels that are appropriate, including pictures. You may want to include, I already said things like, what does it look like, feel like, and sound like? But it also might have examples of sentence stems or examples of things that they might hear if you need to redirect a behavior. And that just makes it so that every single student has the same expectations and the same understanding for what success looks like. So we want that to be really clear. Nobody should be guessing. I tell you, these slides of mine. You ever have one of those days where the tech just doesn't want to participate? So one of the ways that we can do that, I think, is one of my favorite things to do in my classroom, and it is a strong ACES expectation, which is developing self-management, which if you're looking at your TIF at a glance, ACES Self-Management Skill 2 talks about managing information and materials for one's own learning. And so we want our students to have agency. We want our students to be able to be strong, independent learners, and that's going to serve them well in your classroom, in a college classroom, in a job training program. We want them to have the tools that they need to be successful and manage those on their own. So, what this might look like in your classroom is to create routines and design your classroom in a way where students, once again, we're coming back to this idea of like students know what it looks like to be successful. So if the expectation for your classroom is that they have something to write with and something to write on, and that they bring their notes every day, that is a clearly defined expectation, and they should know what to happen if I don't bring a pencil, if I didn't bring paper, if I came in late. So as somebody who's been doing ABE a long time, I teach a math class, and so it's really important that we come prepared to be able to be mathematicians. And so I have these are the questions that I go over the most often when I start a semester, and then after spring break usually, because we need a reminder. um, the first one is like, where do I get materials? So a student should know if they need a pencil, where can they go to get it? If they need a notebook, where can they go to get it? If they want a highlighter, where can they go to get it? That way you're not taking instructional time to take care of them when you could be doing a lesson or doing one-on-one work, but then also that they're not wasting their instructional time, that they can be engaged and on task. Another question that I get often is, well, how do I turn my stuff in? You didn't tell me to turn it in. You forgot to remind me. And so I have a system in my room where we turn stuff in here, and we do it at right away when we come in. And all the students know where that is, what time it is, and we're just really consistent with that. What should I do if I finish early or I have a question? I know that a lot of us work with groups of students and we are running around a lot, and we don't always have like to be able to give one-on-one attention to every student, especially maybe when they want it. So what should they be able to do while they're waiting for you, is a really important thing. We want to make sure that we've set up a routine on what that looks like. And other things like, I was gone, what did I miss? We don't want to say like, we just waited for you because we didn't know what to do. A student should be able to know, where do they go to look up the work, or where do they get started, or what do they do while they're waiting for someone to check in with them. So these are ideas of routines, and things that you can do to set up in your classroom, that is a part of the culture that we're working with. We want it to be a place where we all belong, we all know what we need to do, and we all know where we need to go to make those things happen. We also want a student to be able to communicate this to somebody else. So if you have a new student who comes in, you can have a student leader communicate that or show the new student where to go, what to do. That helps with having agency over our, and love for the space that we're learning in. And I think that that's really important, and one of those things that maybe sometimes gets missed. And we love it when our students can be independent and take ownership over what they're doing. So I wanted to show you what that looks like. So this is some pictures from my classroom earlier this week. The top picture, you can tell, is my material and self-service station. Um, it is a hot mess right now because it's being used. We have a few weeks left of our semester, so it's not as pretty as it usually is. But I wanted to just show an authentic way. My students in this corner of the classroom know that if there's something they need to be a mathematician, it's probably there. So in my space, I'm able to have a number of materials out. I know if my friends are in a correctional setting or some other settings where you can't always have those, I know that I am really fortunate to be able to do this. So my goal is that if a student has an idea or wants to try something or needs something to do some work, that we have a place that we can go to get it. So I provide notebooks and binders and pens and pencils and sticky notes and note cards and tissues and calculator chargers, all of those things in one specific space. And so a student knows that that's where they go. And if they can't find something there, they can ask and I can see if I can find it. And I usually restock this beginning of the semester, it's always fully stocked and beautiful. Then I usually try to do it around middle of the semester because I have managed enrollment, but it might be something that you replenish. I also have some students who really like to take over the space and make sure it looks nice and organized. So I have some students where I'm like, oh, it looks like we need to fill up the pencils, and my students, I have a couple students who can help me replenish the station. We have one of those, like, if you kill it you fill it rules. So if somebody takes the last of a supply, they are able to communicate that with us so that it's there for the next person. And then you'll also notice on the bottom, I have a very messy class workstation. That is where my students can find things like scratch paper or graph paper. They can, right now, there's multiplication tables in there because we've been working on filling out a multiplication chart. But there's also like a specific part in that hanging file folder for each class that I have. So students know that if they are in my class that starts at 1:45, they can look for the orange folder, and that's where I put extra copies of materials. And then they know that they can put materials in for me in the amber grade this folder, so that they know that I will check that every day and that they can put stuff in there. And I don't have to tell students where to go find the work we did yesterday. They know that they can just go there and grab a paper copy. And what really is nice about this is that it enables us to like get in and get started sooner, but it also makes it so that when a student is gone, there's a little bit of less shame or less uncomfortability because they know how to be successful. You're going to go in, grab your worksheet, work on that until we work on our next thing. Here's where you can turn it in. Here's where you can get a copy. And that's a norm and an expectation that I'm making sure I'm checking it and that they're making sure they're checking it. And that is a really easy thing to implement, but it saves me so much time and energy because I can literally just like pick up my papers, throw it in there, and it's done. And I don't have to like try to find something later. I do know that I'm really lucky because I have a space that I'm in where I share with a couple other teachers, but we keep our self-service station shared. So we all share that, but then I have my own space for my classes and they have space for theirs. So I just wanted to kind of show you what that could look like in terms of managing your space and setting up your classroom. Another thing to really make sure is that these two spaces are really easily accessible by students in my room. So nobody has to feel awkward like they're getting up in front of the whole class if they forgot a pencil. There's just a nice easy path to get there. Or if they come in, they can just sneak right by there and pull out a paper that they need without having it to be like a big thing. And I have found that that has really helped my students come in, and like if they miss a day, they come back, and that always is a huge marker of success. So let's just take a breath there. I am so excited to talk about these things, but I want to make sure that we are thinking about how brains work and how overloaded our brains can get, and also attention spans. So I have been with you now since 2:15. It's 2:40. I want you to think about what time you have with your students. So I have a 3-hour block with my students. I certainly shouldn't get up and just talk at them for 3 hours. We know that that's not best practice, and it's also a lot of work to stand in front of people for 3 hours. So one of the other things that we can do to encourage positive behaviors is to make sure we are giving our brains the best chance we can for learning. And so this ties well into our ACES learning strategies. Skill 4 talks about having students be able to articulate what helps them learn. And that is something that I don't think we talk about enough. It's just like, you signed up for a class and this is how it's going to be, and you're just going to figure it out. Whereas we can be really mindful and careful in how we set our students up for success, but then also how we set ourselves up for success. So one of the things that I get challenged with is when students start getting distracted, start checking their phone, decide they need to take a bunch of water breaks, clearly check out. And then even though we have been together for 3 hours, they don't remember any of it by the time I see them the next time we're in class together. And so I've started making some tweaks into how I am giving students input, and then how I'm letting them share outputs with me. And it has been really successful. So I wanted to share 3 of those with you today. So not a good model of this today. I've just been yakking at you. Lectures, I've been doing a lot of research on how brains absorb information. And it looks like there's consensus in this 15 to 30-minute window of passive learning. Now, it's really important. Our students need to know how to listen and take notes. Like, it just seems like a life skill that people just expect as an adult. We can just do, and we can just sit and listen to just massive walls of information. But that's just really not the case. And so we want to make sure that as we are planning, students will need to know how to actively listen. They're going to need to know how to listen for information. They're going to need to learn how to take notes and things like that. But we can also do things to encourage activity and interaction to break it up so that we can reset some of that 15 to 30-minute time frame, especially when those days where we just have to give them a lot of information, because there are realistically times where we just need to give them information. And I don't want to act like that's not true, because it certainly is. As we're moving more towards online learning, one of the things that I see a lot of teachers do is post instructional videos for students to watch. I have been doing online learning since the pandemic, and I have a lot of tools that allow me to see how my students are engaging with the videos. And I will tell you, they don't engage with the videos very often. And so we need to teach our students how to engage with a video, but then also set them up for success with the videos that we're doing. So in my experience, 6 to 12 minutes of content in a video is about as much as you should do in a single video. I personally think that 6 to 8 minute window is probably the sweet spot. I think after 10, I think we start getting diminished returns. And if a student sees that it's a less than 10-minute video, they're more likely to actually click on it and watch it, which always makes me happy. In my research, I have really seen that the highest retention of information is the stuff that happens in the beginning of the video. So you might want to think about how you're giving information. So if you are finding a video or you are recording a video, how can you make sure that some of the really important material is early in the video, or how can you break it up? Because even the act of like a video ending and then having to find another link gives our brain a switch of something happening. There's also a ton of really great resources out there that can create engagement if you are asking your students to watch instructional videos, whether it's at home, like a flipped classroom, or whether it's distance learning. There's lots of ways that we can create some engagement. So the first one is to provide a transcript so students can read it. That's obviously an important accessibility thing that we can do. I also really like making viewing guides where students are actively listening and completing a viewing guide. I think that sometimes that really helps students kind of see like, okay, well, what's coming next? How much longer is it? And sometimes my students are more likely to watch a video and complete a viewing guide than just like watch it and tell me what happens. I also have really been playing with embedded questions recently in my videos. So there's a lot of tools out there where you can, there's like Edpuzzle and TED Ed and Screencastify and quizzes. There's tons of them. I use D2L in my classes, and my D2L video uploader has the capability for me to stop a video and ask some questions right in the video that students have to interact with. And what I find about that is that if they weren't listening and the video pauses, that gets their attention and kind of gets them back on track. So if we want our students to learn from videos, making sure that we are setting them up for success while we're doing that. The last kind of work I wanted to talk about was a block time of independent work. One of the things that I have noticed is that it is hard for me as an adult who has been in education my whole life to stay focused for 3 hours, especially when I'm like trying to work on something on my own. So, one of the things that I have found to be really successful for me and for my students is to set small task goals. So, hey, friend, I want you to work on just the front of this worksheet. And then when you're done, I want you to flag me down. I use cups on my desk. So, like a green cup means like, leave me alone, I'm working. Red cup means, hey, stop, pay attention to me. I have a question or I need your attention. Um, Giving them small goals to work on so that we know that success looks like you've completed this, then you can give yourself a brain break. Um, Also, things like, okay, we are going to set our phone on airplane mode and definitely just like focus our focus for 25 minutes, and then we will get a break, giving them some expectations around how long we're going to ask them to do one task. My most favorite working technique right now that I have found has really been helpful for my students is something called the Pomodoro technique, which means that we are locked in for 25 minutes, but then we get a 5-minute break. And whether that means we get up, we move around, we talk to our friends, we can check our phone. And what I found is that it is when my students know that that's what we're doing, I lose less instructional time than if I'm like, we're going to just plow through a giant lecture and then give you a 10-minute break. My students are able to kind of lock back in and keep working and keep on task, and they will remember more of what we're working on and they get more engaged. This is also a really important technique to teach our students who are studying. My students really struggle with how to study outside of the classroom, and they think you should just like stare at a paper for hours. And I'm working really, really hard with my students to talk about like a successful student has to take breaks. Our brains need breaks. Um, and so one of the things I want to do is I want to encourage everybody right now in just a second to do my third favorite thing, which is called a 20-20-20. In my classroom, we do 20-20-20s quite often, especially when it is a high technology day. So a 20-20-20 break is every 20 minutes, we look at something that is 20 feet away for at least 20 seconds. So one of the nice things about that is that as soon as I usually tell my students it's break time, the first thing that they do is they want to pull out their cell phone. We want to take care of eye health. And so encouraging our students to look away. So I'm going to be quiet for just a second. And if you are watching the recording, I want you to do it too. But I want you to just like look at something that is 20 feet away from you or as far away from you as you can, that is not a screen, for just a couple seconds, and give your eyes and your brain a break. So I'm going to be quiet for just a couple seconds. Let's give our brains a break. Normally I would have a 20-second timer on, but I'm not going to do that. I often notice that students in those moments will also, I don't know if you noticed, I did a body check and I ran through and did a body scan, saw how my body felt, saw how my body needed some movement, and was able to attend to that. Teaching our students how to attend to those needs of needing to move their body or needing to give their eyes and their brains a break is something that we don't spend enough time with in the classroom. And I really find that it is actually a really important learning strategy that we need to do. And then the last strategy that I wanted to talk about is that we know that it's not sunshine and roses in every classroom. You're going to have students who are not doing desired behaviors. They might be having a bad day. They might be in a class they don't really want to be in. There might be other stuff happening. We all have days where we are not bringing our best self into the classroom. And so constructive redirection is an important technique. So what happens when we're not getting those behaviors that we want and we expect to see in the classroom? So I really try to focus how I ask students to maybe get back on task or maybe make a better choice with three things in mind. So first, I want to be really specific. So I don't want to be passive aggressive. I don't want to be like, come on, can you just like get it together? That doesn't tell a student or another person what is the behavior that is maybe not in line with what it needs to be. So for me, it might be, hey, I really need you to put your chair feet on the floor. We have students who like to lean back in their chairs. Or it might be, like, I need you to put your cell phone away right now. Um, or I notice that you are texting instead of listening. Be really specific about what that behavior is. And it could be like, hey, I hear you, I'm hearing unkind words between you and your table mate that we don't need to be doing that. So being super specific about what is the targeted behavior you would like to redirect. We also want to be respectful. One of the things that I have learned is that I have a very dry sense of humor. I can also get a little snarky and things like that. And so one of the things I always want to make sure is that I'm being respectful to a student. I don't know what is causing their behavior to be out of alignment with our goals, but I want to respect them and give an opportunity for them to redirect their behavior without the expectation that there's going to be bigger behaviors or a blowout or anything like that. So I always want to be respectful. I want to use a respectful tone. I want to use respectful body language. I try really hard to not call somebody out from across the room. So I might come and sit right next to you and say, like, hey, friend, I really need this to not happen right now and not be calling you out in front of everybody. And the third thing is I really want to be supportive. I want to help find a way for you to be successful in the classroom. And there are limitations to what I can do, but if it falls in line with what our expectations are, I want to be able to do that for you. So when you're looking at these three things, you want to make sure that these redirections are in alignment to the expectations for the site and your classroom. So you want to make sure that if it is the first time a student is leaning back in a chair, you're not kicking them out of your classroom, unless that is the hard line that your program has. The thing that I found most successful is to provide two reasonable options. So I have a lot of problems with cell phone use in my classroom. And so I often try to give two choices that are in alignment with what our expectations are and encourage them to choose the one that is best for them in that moment. So for example, I might say, you can choose to put your phone on airplane mode and put it in your bag for the next 25 minutes because that's when we're going to have break. Or you can choose to go out into the hallway until you're able to put your phone away and focus on what we're learning. I want you to choose what's best for you right now. That tells them that there are two options that they can work on, but that if they can't choose one of those options, we would need to escalate it. I find that using the words choose which of these two things I'm going to offer you really seems to help my students feel like they have some choice and some agency. And it doesn't always end up the way we want to, but it gives them choice. And I think that that's really important. But then we need to be really consistent in our intervention. So if we are not able to do that thing that we've all agreed that that's how we behave in the classroom, then there needs to be consistent interventions, whether I'm asking you to leave, whether we are going to have a meeting afterwards to discuss what we're going to do next time, and those kinds of things where it doesn't feel like anybody's being specifically targeted. I'm not treating you this way because it's you. These are the things that are happening because this is what we're seeing. I see in the chat somebody mentions humor. I definitely use humor in my classroom and with my students. They respond to that really well. And then the other thing I see in the chat that I think is really important is that we don't want to always focus on the things that aren't going well. So having those positive things. So when we're talking about our expectations, it shouldn't be that like, you're not on your cell phone. It might be you're using your cell phone during breaks, or there's lots of things that we could be doing, but talking about it in an active way where here are the things that we are doing rather than just focusing on the things that they're not. And I think that that is really important. And it's easier to redirect and save face and to stay engaged when it feels like it is a positive action moving forward. And then one of the things that I think a lot of us do just inherently, but maybe being more mindful about acknowledging and praising the correction to the behavior. So if you see that somebody put their cell phone away, and you can say like, hey, I see that you put your phone away and that you're back on task. Great job. Thank you for doing that. Or, hey, I see that you are flat on your chair. That's great. Thank you for being safe in our space. So acknowledging that they did that. I have a student right now. He is a young man in his late teens, and he loves getting stickers. So when he made a good choice in class the other day, I gave him a sticker of a broccoli wearing sunglasses, and it was the best thing that had ever happened. And we had the best day ever. So you're going to find ways to give that positive reinforcement to good behavior and not just only calling out bad behavior. So we have talked a lot about some very specific ideas that I have used in my classrooms that align with some of those um, positive behavioral intervention strategies that also align with some of our ACES skills. And so I want to take a few minutes to talk in small groups about what this might look like in your setting. So what's going to happen is I'm going to give you 3 suggestions of things that you could talk about in a small group. And if none of the 3 are really talking to your group, you could talk about what are some strategies that you find to be helpful. I love in the chat, somebody is saying that they don't maybe always understand how their behaviors are impacting other people. And I think that that's really important. We're a community and we want to make sure that everybody in our classroom has opportunities to learn. So in your small group, I'm going to share that you're going to have I just came up with 3 different situations that might happen in a classroom. You can pick any of the 3, or you could just talk about something else. Christine, are we still looking okay for the timeline we had set for our breakouts?
Yes, I believe so. There'll be 5 minutes and a 2-minute warning, and I've got most people will be in groups of 4 with a few groups
Beautiful.
of 3.
Beautiful. So I do ask, I know it's late, please do not log off. Please do not stay quiet. Use this opportunity to talk with your friends and share some ideas. So Christine, why don't we go ahead and open up those breakout rooms?
All right, and if you are having trouble joining, please chat to me.
And then Christine, we can probably pause the recording.